Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Ink and Overalls. I'm so glad you could join me today. If this is your first time and you just stumbled upon this episode, I'm so happy that you're here. If it's not your first time, welcome back. Thank you so much for hanging out with me again. Don't forget to hit the like button, share, subscribe, comment, all those things. All those interactions matter. It helps so much for the channel and for the podcast in general. And I just appreciate all of you so much. I'm having so much fun sharing my love of all things homesteading with you guys, and I'm just so happy that so many of you continue to come back week after week and listen to me. Today's episode is going to be about herbs. So I'm gonna I grow herbs for medicinal and for culinary purposes, and they're such a versatile thing to have in your garden for so many different reasons. But there's something that sometimes you don't really necessarily think about when you're writing out your garden plan if you've never really grown them before, if you've never used them in your garden before, and if you are wanting to kind of get into the medicinal side of things. It can be a little bit intimidating at first because there is a lot of information out there and there are a lot of herbs out there, and I understand that fully, and I have lots of resources that I look to for assistance whenever I'm making things, planting things, all of that. I'm not afraid to call on resources. And so don't ever be just because you don't know something yet doesn't mean you can't learn it. And just hang out with me, bear with me, listen to me, and it's easier than you think it is. And there are, you don't have to grow every herb under the sun to have a miniature herbal apothecary in your home. You can do a lot more than you probably think. So I'm going to cover 5 herbs today. 5 herbs that I feel like you need to grow this year, regardless of whether or not you've ever even dabbled in herbs. Okay, these are going to be basic. I am trying very hard to make sure that I am highlighting herbs that you can find at a garden center whenever you go shopping for plant starts. I'm trying to get you to a point where you can pick those up. If you don't want to start them from seed, I start mine from seed, and I buy plant starts for these, for herbs in particular. But the ones I'm talking about today, you'll be able to find at Lowe's, Tractor Supply, local garden center here in just a few weeks. And so, like I said, I love growing herbs for both culinary use in the kitchen as well as making herbal remedies, salves, tinctures, and teas. Those are the things that I typically, whenever I'm going to take an herb and I'm going to use it outside of a cooking purpose, I'm usually going to turn that into either I'm going to infuse an oil with it, and I'm not making an essential oil. That's a different process. I'm making an infused herbal oil, an herbal infusion. So I will do that, and then I will use that oil in a salve, or I will use my herbs in tinctures, or I will dry them or use them fresh in teas. And those are just different ways that I prefer to use them. You can make all sorts of things from herbs, from syrups and oxymels and different things. But this is just where I'm going to touch on today, because we're going to talk about the herbs you need to be growing. And then in coming episodes, a couple of episodes down the road, we're going to talk about, I'm going to show you how. I'm going to show you how to make a salve, how to make an herbal infusion. We're going to talk about how I make my teas, and I'm going to show you quickly how to make a tincture. So after you watch these next few episodes with me, you're going to be ready to get started and to just put your hand to some things and see how it goes. So if you've never grown or used herbs in a medicinal capacity, it may seem overwhelming, but what you may not realize is that most herbs are beneficial to our health in many different ways. In other words, what I'm saying is, if you want an herb to help you if you have a cold coming on, there's not only one herb that's going to help you. You can grow something in your yard, while maybe, you would reach for, if you look it up, this may be the optimal herb to use for that particular ailment. But chances are, if you've got just a few things growing, herbs growing, there's a lot of things you can do with just a few herbs. And you'll see what I mean in just a minute, because it's kind of hard for me to explain it without giving a straight out example. But we're going to get there, okay? So don't be intimidated. I'm going to show you how to start a basic herb garden. I'm going to show you how to put your herbs to use. And it's going to be fun, okay? It's not going to be overwhelming. We're in this together. Let's roll. So I want to start real quick with a disclaimer. These are my notes I'm looking at down here. I'm sorry. Disclaimer, I'm not a medical professional. Well, I'm a medical professional, but I'm not giving you this advice because I'm a nurse. But I'm not giving you this advice as a medical professional. Herbal medicine is not something mentioned in nursing school. It's not something that I learned about there. I'm self-taught. I've learned these things myself, mostly through books and through watching a few people that I trust on YouTube. And none of these claims will have much of any research proving what I'm saying. So whenever I'm telling you what some of these herbs are capable of doing, I'm speaking from the experience of herbalists that have gone before me. I'm looking at historical evidence of what these herbs have been used for, and I'm going off of what I personally have used them for and seen them work for. Okay. There's not a lot of money in testing herbal remedies. They're not going to fund, this study where they try a tincture and see if that helps everybody's menstrual cramps. That's just not something they're going to really see done, because that's more of a pharmaceutical type thing. These are herbs. And so, yeah, I don't know. Herbs can get kind of a wacky reputation. You may think I'm some kind of a quack, but I've seen it work. I know it works. I wouldn't be sharing this if I weren't passionate about it. And I truly believe that you can very easily grow a few things that can really help improve your quality of life overall and keep you from reaching for some over-the-counter drugs at certain points whenever you may be sick and needing some extra support. All that to say, I take prescriptions every day. I have a medicine cabinet. I'm not all natural 100% anything. And as you can tell from my makeup, as I said, I'm not a medical professional. And if you have any underlying medical conditions, or you have any doubts, any questions, any concerns about anything you deal with health-wise, or you're pregnant or anything like that, or if you're talking about like a young child, always proceed with caution. Use your common sense and talk to your doctor when you need to. Okay. Now, I also want to give a quick shout out to my friend Amber at Hillside Farm for collaborating with me, because we both love herbs, and narrowing all this list down was not easy, and I relied on her to help me out. So I appreciate her so much. It's always great when you have a friend or two you could call on who can kind of give you, kind of be your brain and help you think some things through. All right. Now, so for this episode, I'm covering 5 herbs that you need to grow. I'm covering basil, rosemary, oregano, mint, and thyme. Okay? And I'm going to tell you why. I'm not diving into any herbs that right now that you can forage, like things you would find in the wild. Your things like mullein or mullein, goldenrod, mimosa, chickweed, nettle, plantain, and elderberry are all things that I personally have foraged. I like to forage those. Side note, I do like growing my own plantain, but I'm not going to go into any of that today. I wanted to break this into bite-sized bits of information for you. And if you're new to this, I wanted to offer herbs that you can find already as plant starts, like I already said. And start small with familiar plants and learn to use them before you start focusing on identifying herbs in the wild and learning how to use those. Does that make sense? Like, this way you'll know, like you could put a tag in and say, this is basil, instead of, okay, I gotta go find this herb. Now I gotta make sure it's the one I need. Did I identify it correctly? And now how am I gonna use it? Instead, I'm pushing us into a realm where you will know what this plant is. I'm going to tell you what you can use it for, and I'm going to show you how to use it. All right. So let's jump in, and I'm going to jump right in with one of my absolute favorite things to grow, and that's basil. Basil is a beautiful and easy to grow herb. It comes in a lot of varieties. There are, you really could plant half your garden in basil and never repeat a certain type of basil. There are so many different ones to choose from, and they're all beautiful and they're all great for different reasons. But now some of my favorites, I do have favorites. I like to grow just a regular sweet basil. Genovese basil is really good. Emily, I usually go with Genovese over Emily, but a lot of people like that one. I love lettuce leaf basil and I love mammoth basil because they grow these big, beautiful leaves. They're gorgeous, and they're just easy to harvest because you go out, you get one leaf, and like you're ready to go cook supper, one or two. So I also like to grow purple basil because it's fun. And I have a dwarf basil plant that I'm absolutely in love with that I always grow. I don't tend to use it as much for anything except I like to let it like bloom and bring in pollinators, and I just love the way it looks. All basil is a spectacular forage plant for pollinators when it blooms. But when we use it, we usually are trying to use it before it bolts, when it gets its blossoms, which is when it's in the heat, usually extreme heat. You'll see it start to bolt, which means it'll send up a shoot with little seed pods on the side, and that draws in pollinators to your garden. And so, see, growing these things, growing basil, growing these different herbs I'm going to talk about, they are going to benefit in so many ways, because not only are they wonderful in the kitchen, you can use them medicinally, but most of them also are amazing helpers in the garden when it comes to deterring pests and things like that. So, like I said, when we harvest our basil, we harvest the leaves, but when the flowers come, you can either cut those back to keep your basil plant kind of putting off shoots, or leave it and let the pollinators come and enjoy it. It's a beautiful, beautiful plant. It has a sweet smell, and some varieties give more of a licorice or citrusy scent depending on what you choose. There's a cinnamon basil, there's lemon basil, really just so many things different varieties, and some of them are a lighter green, some of them are darker. I wasn't kidding when I said you could plant half your garden in basil and not repeat a type. But now keep in mind, if you do have you want to experiment with different types like lemon basil, just bear that in mind if you're using it in a culinary situation, which like in the kitchen, because it will kind of add different flavors to your dishes depending on what you're doing. Now, a basic sweet basil, very popular in Italian cooking, extremely popular as an herb to really bring out the flavor in a tomato sauce or on pizza, in pastas. You make pesto with basil. Lots of different uses in the kitchen. And it's as easy a lot of times as just picking it fresh in the garden, rinsing it, chopping it, and adding it to your dishes. And that applies to all of these I'm going to talk about today. When you get ready to use them in your kitchen, as far as how, just harvest your leaves, your plant, and just chop them, rinse them, chop them, and use them as you would a dried herb, only you've just got it, brought it in from the garden. You can also dry them. Obviously, you can hang them to dry, like I'm sure you've probably seen people do, and I do it too. Or you can use a food dehydrator and dry them that way. But like I said, you can always add them fresh as a garnish, or you can dry them, and that way you can store them after the season is over. Especially toward the end of the year, I like to go out, harvest a whole bunch of basil, and bring it in and put it, let it dry, put it in like a food processor to get it a little bit smaller, and put it in a mason jar. And so then I can use it however I want to while I don't have fresh basil in the garden. As far as medicines go, basil contains a lot of beneficial properties. It has a lot of vitamin C, which you probably know, you may not, is good for immune function. It's great for wound healing. It also has tannins in it, and tannins are, you think of tannins, you may think of like tanning leather, because they legit use it for that, I think. But also there's a lot of antimicrobial properties in tannins, and there's a lot of tannins in tannins are in most of these plants I'm talking about today, because it's what gives them kind of the extra oomph, like to give them the benefit of antimicrobial properties. And it also is full of beta carotene, which is good for your eye health and once again for your immunity. Now, if you're out in your garden and you have a sting or a mosquito bite, you can chew up a piece of basil, like a leaf of basil, or you can mash it up if you want to and rub it on like your sting and like leave it there for about 10 minutes. And it's going to ease that sting or ease that itch and make that feel better. After 15 minutes, you take that off and check it out. And as long you can repeat that process as much as you need to, it's not going to hurt you. But you can do that for your kids. You can do that for yourself. There's a lot of benefit to having, like I said, there's a lot of benefits to having this in your garden. You're out there, you get stung, just chew it up and hog it onto your arm, and you'll find that you're good to go. But like I said, you can also mash it up, so I don't just sound disgusting. But anyway, also in a tea, so dried or fresh in a tea, basil can help to ease your headache. It can help relieve stress. It can soothe your stomach. And I make a basil and rosemary tincture. A tincture, I'll just go ahead and kind of say, because I'm going to probably be saying that word a lot. A tincture is just when you use like a really high proof alcohol and herbs, and you steep those herbs in that alcohol for an extended amount of time. It helps to withdraw all the medicinal properties. Then you have a very concentrated herbal medicine that you can use, and you literally take just kind of like dropperfuls at a time. So I make one of those with, like I said, rosemary and basil for stomach aches, stomach cramps, and like menstrual cramps even. In the garden, like I said before, basil is beautiful. It's great for pollinators, but it makes a great companion plant, especially for tomatoes. It has a pungent smell, and it can help deter pests. So I love to plant basil with my tomatoes. Plus, they just kind of go together. I think of basil and I think of tomatoes like they're just like peanut butter and jelly. So that's basil. Like I said, one of my faves. I will end up starting an entire tray of basil because I'll put it everywhere. I love basil. Rosemary. This may be my absolute favorite. I don't know. It's hard for me to pick favorites. That's why I said my friend Amber was so much help, because I can't make decisions when it comes to herbs. I love so many of them. But rosemary is just beautiful, and I don't know why it just like calls to me. I want to buy like every rosemary plant I see. I have some creeping rosemary that's gorgeous because it stays low to the ground and just kind of flows over, and it has got an extremely pungent like rosemary smell to it whenever I pass by it. Like, it's my most fragrant, I guess, variety that I grow. And then I have what is it called, that rosemary? Upright rosemary is the other one I like to grow, and it just is what it says. I mean, it will grow into like a big bush if you let it grow long enough. Now I have, let's see, rosemary can be carried through our wild minnows. That's what I used to call, I don't know if y'all ever like fished with your daddy growing up, but here in the South Mississippi, when I'd go fishing with my dad, we'd have a bucket of minnows, and I called them minnows. And anyway, I'm sorry, I don't know where I went for that, but anyway, we can carry rosemary through our mild winters here in South Mississippi with just a little frost protection. When it's going to get a real deep freeze, like 32 degrees is not going to bother it much at all. And I have one in my garden that's probably like this wide and like that tall. She's been there for like 2 years now, I think. And I just, when a bad frost is going to come, I will take some hay or straw and put around the base and kind of like up on the plant some. And then I will put a bucket, like I will pull it in together. I'll harvest it if I need to make it fit, but I'll put a bucket over it, and leave it. And that has helped to protect them from frost so far for me. Even when we had like a polar vortex last year, and I did that and it survived. So she's beautiful. I love it. I have a few, but that one's my pride and joy back there. And, yeah, like I said, it grows like a bush. It's an upright rosemary. Now, in the kitchen, rosemary adds like an earthy, cozy flavor to dishes. It contains vitamin C, calcium, magnesium, bitters, and tannins, among some other things. So once again, a very, very much a powerhouse in the world of herbal medicine. My dog is snoring again. I feel like this is like the snoring dog podcast some days. I have one dog here and one dog there. This dog is quiet unless that dog tries to love me. Kids. And that one snores like crazy. Okay, so rosemary is widely known as being good for your brain. It's like, that's one of the main, like, think about your head. Like, it can improve your concentration. It can improve memory. It can help with headaches. It is a mild analgesic, which is why I put it in that basil and rosemary tincture, because analgesic is like painkiller kind of. And so it can kind of ease that. It's an antioxidant, and it can help with your circulation. Usually that would be in the form of a tea or a tincture. Now, any of these herbs, of course, if you make a tea with them, it's going to be very heavy, on the flavor of whatever herb you're putting in there. But now you can put honey, you can put lemon, you can add mint or, some other herb you enjoy, lemongrass, to it to kind of help. But sometimes, we just kind of end up with a really strong tea that it may not be your favorite, but it's going to help you greatly. I also use rosemary infused oil, like I said, like those infused oils I was talking about earlier. I use that in my herbal chest rub that I make in my shop, and I also use it in my hair oil, which is literally, I call it rosemary hair oil. And because it's known to kind of stimulate your follicles, helps your scalp, like improve scalp health, and can help your hair over time. So that's what that's commonly used for. And and I should also go in to say that any of these things I'm mentioning, like I am like condensing this. These herbs, most of them, there's like 12 more things you can do with them. These are what I find they're useful for, and these are the common things you're going to run into that you can use them for on a daily basis in your house, or weekly, monthly, whatever, when you need them. And so that's why I kind of honed in on the things I use them for, and the things that I know my friends have used them for, because that way you don't get even more overwhelmed. Oregano. I have an oregano plant that is currently in its 3rd year. If it gets knocked back by frost or anything like that, it tends to come right back. I don't know if everybody's is like that. This thing's been out there forever, and it just keeps going. Oregano is another one of the herbs that's heavily associated, with Italian cuisine, Italian cooking. You find it in your Italian seasoning blends, and in a lot of your Italian recipes. If you're making spaghetti sauce or anything like that, you're going to see oregano in the recipe. But also, I have found that it's in a lot of more like Hispanic Mexican cooking that I do whenever I'm doing that sort of thing and trying to put together like a taco or fajita seasoning. I find that oregano is often in those recipes as well. Now, whether or not that's authentic, I'm not sure. I can't say. I don't know. But I do know, whenever I've made a birria tacos, the birria, whatever they're called, oregano was in those. It's in the taco seasoning that I make. It's in a lot of Mexican cooking. Oregano, as far as medicines go, is an antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, and this herb is a powerhouse in the realm of fighting bacterial and fungal infections. I like to feed the fresh herbs to my animals whenever they seem a little off, or just to give them a boost. If I've got a bunch of it that needs to be used and I'm good in the kitchen, I'll just hand it out to animals. Everybody gets some. I mean, except dogs and cats, obviously, but I mean livestock. And I have used oregano essential oil actually in a couple drops in a waterer for some chicks more than once that I felt were dealing with coccidiosis, which is a bacterial infection. And I have seen that resolve. Now, this is not a discussion about essential oils. That's its own thing. I don't sell essential oils. I'm not talking about that today. When you hear me talk about oils I use, that's typically something I have infused myself. Not an essential oil, but just an infused herbal oil. But in this instance, I am talking specifically about an essential oil that you can buy that's very concentrated. And I only use it in those situations. But this is a very hot oil, guys. If you purchase a oregano essential oil and you intend to use it in any capacity, make sure that it is heavily diluted and that you use it in a very small space first to make sure, if you're putting it on skin especially, that it doesn't just completely react in a bad way. When I say I put some, I mean 2 drops in a big waterer, for those chicks that I used it on. But I had to say that because I've used it for that more than once and it's worked. And so I can't just this is a big hack for me when it comes to the homestead as far as how I use herbs on the homestead. All right, on to mint. We're almost at the end of our list. Now, when I talk about mint, I'm including peppermint, spearmint, and there's an apple mint, chocolate mint, any of those in that family. That's what I'm talking about right now. Now, in the kitchen, mint is more of your garnish than a main ingredient. You're not going to use it on a steak, obviously, or in your spaghetti, most likely, but it can be so refreshing, in water or in sweet tea. It makes a great aromatic, soothing tea, like a hot tea, and especially if you're stuffy. So think of mint as the opener upper. No, I didn't come up with that. That's from a book. I think it's from this one, A Healing Garden by Juliet Blankspore. But that's the perfect way to describe mint. It's an opener upper. It can relieve gas and bloating and help with nausea. So kind of think of it opening up your digestive tract to help it out. And then it's a decongestant because it has a really high menthol content. And it's great for sore throats. And I like to use it alongside rosemary in my hair oil that I make. And it's a key component in my peppermint pine headache salve, which I sell a lot of because it is amazing and can be used for more than that. I make an infused oil with pine needles and peppermint, and then I make it into a salve. But that salve can be used you can put it on your temples, on your neck when you have a headache. But you can also put it on your belly if you're feeling nauseated, if you've got car sickness, anything like that. Peppermint is wonderful because it can really help that nausea subside. When I had my youngest son, Eli, and I was in the hospital, I was so nauseous the first day after all the anesthesia. I had a C-section. And so after all of that, the spinal and all that stuff, I was so nauseous. And my sweet sister came to the hospital and she had some peppermint in her bag. And she put some peppermint essential oils onto a cool wet rag. And I just kind of just held it in front of my face because it was just so comforting. Mint it's just so good when you're feeling sick. And like I said, it's an opener upper. So even, whether it's like a stomach issue or it's like sinus allergy type stuff, mint can help you out. It can also, it's another one of those that can help ease the itch and burning from insect bites and stings. Now in the garden, I have to say this about mint. Mint is a bully, or so I've heard. I've never had any problems with it because I've always kind of given it its own space to run around, but it's a very vigorous plant and it will spread and take over an area if you aren't careful. So for this reason, a lot of time, it doesn't mean don't grow it. Please, by all means, please grow all the mint. But when you do it, just keep that in mind. Be mindful, plant it in a container or in an area where it has space to do its thing. But I wanted to let you know that before you stick it in your flower bed and before you know it, all you have is thyme. Thyme is the next one. All you have is mint. All right, guys, now we're wrapping up. We're getting there. Thyme is our last one. Thyme. I wasn't going to include this one, but then this is one that Amber said she loves to use. And so I decided that it was a really good one to put on here because it's another readily available one. So I always grow it. It's so beautiful. I just have never personally used it a whole lot in a medicinal capacity, but she has. And so I'm going to talk from her experience on this one. Thyme is a dainty and beautiful plant to grow in the garden. You can get lemon thyme, and it's like a variegated, like these tiny leaves that are green and white. And it's just so pretty. And it's little, and the leaves are little, and it's just, I don't know, it's like a fairy plant. I love it. Full transparency, never have I ever gathered thyme to use in my own kitchen. And that's only because it's just a little too earthy for my preference. It's not that it's bad. A lot of people love it. It's in a lot of recipes, especially like those cozy ones, like the stews and like goulash and hearty foods like that. You'll see it used a lot, and it would be great in there if you had you had a taste for it. Personally, I always substitute rosemary for thyme in my recipes because rosemary has a little bit, it's not quite as earthy, and it has a little more of a lemony, citrusy flavor to it. And I just prefer that more than just like thyme. Like, in my opinion, I'm just going to be honest, thyme tastes like dirt to me in recipes. I feel like I'm like licking a beet or something. But to each his own. I'm sure I've had thyme in recipes, probably like things I've eaten out and stuff, and probably loved it, but I just don't ever add it to my dishes at home. Now, thyme has a reputation as a powerful disinfectant, and it can even be used in household cleaners because it's really, really good at what it does. So, like, I've seen I looked up some recipes when I was preparing for this episode, and there are, like, you can find recipes like Castile soap and, like, thyme, and some have vinegar, and it just depends. I mean, you'd have to look it up, but it can be used as a disinfectant in the household. It's also known to support your glandular system and can aid in easing coughs when you consume a tea, or even you can even make it like a syrup out of it, like kind of like a cough syrup. Amber, my friend, said that she likes to put lemon and thyme in a tea when she starts getting a sore throat, and it's very soothing to her. And then when I was researching for this episode, I found a very simple recipe that I'm probably going to try this year to make, and it's literally a cough syrup. You just steep it in honey just to kind of get it, kind of infuse honey with the thyme instead of infusing in oil, and then you just take it kind of as a cough syrup. As a tincture, it can help cleanse your digestive tract. And what I mean by that when I say it is that thyme has been shown to be good for parasites, and so some people even kind of use it for that, kind of as a cleanser. Like I said, I don't have experience with that. When I was researching for this episode, I did see that was a thing. Like I said, most of these I'm speaking on the authority of what I have experience with. Other than that, what friends have used, and then a little bit I'm disclosing when it's something that I just came across. Now, thyme makes an excellent plant to grow beneath taller plants. I like to put it under stuff. So, like, I like for it to grow under my tomatoes or beneath my peppers or whatever. And it just kind of hangs out under there and helps. I mean, it's living ground cover. And some people say it actually deters hornworms. I don't have experience trying it because I usually grow basil with my tomatoes, but I'm going to try some thyme this year and see if it happens to help at all. Thyme can also be fed to your livestock to promote a healthy digestive tract and for its antimicrobial and antiparasitic benefits. I'm not going to say that your poor little goat who's overrun with barber pole worm just needs to nibble on some thyme. That's not what I'm saying. But I do find that it is extremely effective when you do use herbs in a proactive, preventative way with your livestock to try to keep parasite loads down. And I have experience with that firsthand. I had a goat that was extremely, and she still is. She's very prone to become anemic and to get a worm load on her. And at one point, I felt like I had dewormed her with everything that I could think of. I was like, I'm so sick of hitting her with all this. It's not helping her, and it's like in any capacity. And she just wasn't getting any better. And I just stopped. I was like, okay, I'm done with that. I am going to, and I mean, I don't worm on a schedule. I do it as needed around here anyway, and usually it's not very often at all. But with her, I was trying so hard because I was afraid I was going to lose her. And, but after I tried several things, I was like, this is not working. It's not helping her. I was several weeks in to trying to fight this at this point. And, I just took her off of that and I just started using herbs. I just started using some herbs I was familiar with and feeding them to her. And within 2 weeks, her sclera, her eyelids were pink. She was feeling much better. And ever since then, I've not forgotten. It's one of those things. And I'm bad about that, guys, because I guess it's part of not only the way we're risen, like we've all been kind of, I don't like the word programmed, but we're kind of like, our habit is to think of, meds that we can purchase, things that we can acquire to help with certain ailments and things. And that extends to our homesteads and our animals. And so, I don't want to just play around when she needs help. I'm like, okay, this is what the vet would tell me to do. So this is what I'm going to do. I don't like to play around with that at all. But when I see it work, it's like, you can't deny it. And it's the same way with I make a healing salve that has a bunch of different herbs in it. And I've seen it work better than things that you can get over the counter. And I'm like, you can't say it doesn't work. You can't say it doesn't help because it does. I've seen it happen. And like I said, I'm not even the first to say, oh, just drink a tea or just do this instead because I'm a nurse, so in my brain, I'm like, you can do this and this and this. But when I stop and I truly think to myself, what have I seen work? So much of that goes right back to natural remedies. And I can't believe it. It's crazy to me too, but God really did give us so much of what we need just out there. And honestly, it's not as quacked up as you may think because there are a lot of medications that are mainstream now. Some that you take you may take every day because aspirin's one of them. That was actually originally derived from properties that were found in plants and trees and things like that. So don't throw it out the window because, like I said, I'm not saying that this is going to fix everything, but keep it in mind and give it a try. Okay. Now, in the wrap up, I have more coming. This was the overview of the ones that I think you need to grow this year. I don't want you to be intimidated to try. The worst case scenario, you try to grow them and it doesn't work out. Or you try to grow them and you only use them in the kitchen and or heck, even if you don't do that, you try to grow them and they grow and they're beautiful in your garden and they help deter pests and they bring in pollinators when they bloom and they make you happy when you walk by them and you smell them and it's fantastic. So, because they really do add something to the garden. And whether it's on, I've got an herb garden that's just an herb garden. And I always put plenty of herbs in my back garden. I plant them I had lavender in my flower pots on my front porch last year. Not lavender, rosemary. Sorry, I can't grow lavender down here. It's too hot. or I haven't been able to. That's me. Someone else may have a garden that's like full of it. I don't know. But I can't grow it. So start learning now. There are resources out there. Rosemary Gladstar is one of the most acclaimed, most well-known herbalists ever in the whole wide world. She's fantastic. I have this book by her, which is just called Medicinal Herbs. It's not very big. She's not going over every single one in the world. She's covering, it's the heavy hitters. It's the common ones she's covering in this one. And it's a fantastic way to start. There are other, like I said, several other books and resources that you can find. Don't be intimidated. Learn as you go. Make notes as you go. Write down what you're using it for, what you like it for, what you'd like to try it for later. Because sometimes we forget. You know, you may learn, you may hear, oh, well, basil's really good on a bee sting. But then you may forget it. You know, even though you've got it growing right there, you're like, and then 3 days later, you're like, oh, why didn't I remember that? So write things down. You know, try to remember. Think outside the box. Think about what you have available. Think about your herbs that are right in front of you and how those could possibly benefit you or solve a problem that you have. And that's pretty much it. So I have got a really fun project coming up because I want to show y'all, even if you just wanted to start a small herb garden, how you can do that and, you know, what that would look like. I'm gonna start one with you guys, and probably, if not in the next episode, the next few episodes. And then we're going to talk about how to use them for the things I talked about, like salves and oils and things like that. All right, guys. I hope I didn't completely just make your brains explode, make your heads hurt. If it did, you know, you need to go drink some herbal tea and meet me back next week. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for listening. You can find me here on Mondays at Wally Media Group on YouTube. And I'm also on social media, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook, Streamwater Farm, across the board. And you can find my on my website, www.inkandoveralls.com. There is a newsletter sign up where I'll send out updates, information about my shop, and things like that. And there's also links there for past episodes, merch, things like that. So, once again, thank you so much for your time. I know it's precious, and I'm so happy you decided to spend some of it with me. And I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day. So I hope you find the beauty wherever you are, and I'll see you next time.